I've just come off a Zoom call and the subject came up of how to reproduce what we imagine exquisitely in our playing. And it came up in the context of watching an online masterclass. And the person giving the masterclass sat down and demonstrated. And when they did so, it just seemed so effortless, so exquisite, so right for that passage. And we were talking about whether there might be a kind of secret to practicing that passage in a particular way. You know, if only, it's tempting to think if only we could find just the right way to practice that passage, or just the right angle, or just the right thing to focus on, then we can achieve that exquisite outcome effortlessly as well. Now, what I would say to that is that I think there are three main factors influencing that person giving the masterclass, that great player, and how they're able to produce that outcome. Number one, they know that music inside out. Somebody once said to me rather disparagingly at the beginning of a masterclass, I was just recovering from injury and I brought a piece which was the Chopin Nocturne in E flat, Opus 9 number 2, very, very famous piece. And he looked at me and he looked at what I was about to play and he said, I bloody well hope you know this piece as well as I do. And I went into my shell and I felt so demoralised before we'd even started. Anyway, the point is that these people know that music. They've been listening to it all their lives. They've listened to students play it. They've taught these pieces and they've probably performed most of them. So it's easy to underestimate the value of just knowing how the music goes, knowing what's coming next as you're playing it, in building that confidence to play exquisitely, exactly as you want it to play. It's what I call an elephant in the practice room. It's something that's so easy to overlook, especially for those of us who learn to play primarily by deciphering sheet music from the page. When you know that music in your inner ear, if you like, you can audiate it. You can be out on a walk and call it to mind, play it in your head as if you're listening to somebody else play it, but it's just playing in your imagination. Then you give yourself a chance of kind of manifesting that music exactly how you want it to sound, confidently. Now that may be something that you're already very experienced in. Or you might be like me and somebody who was wholly reliant on the printed page for years and years and years before I then chose to embark on the journey of learning to play more and more by ear, by taking the music off the page, as my American teacher, Sophia Rossoff, used to say. And, you know, if you are that person, then this can be an ongoing journey for you. And, you know, I've created resources such as my Essentials of Playing by Ear course from Piano Portals, which reflects all the tools that I used and still use to take the music off the page. But it's worth bearing in mind that you may not be able to practice a certain passage in a certain way and produce that magical result that you can imagine if you can't also imagine that music, audiate that music in your inner ear clearly. So that's the first thing that I think these great players, these great masters who are giving their masterclasses have on their side. The second thing is that they not only hear the music in detail, but they have a really strong conception of how they want that music to sound. This particular person giving the masterclass that we watched actually told the student what they were imagining when they were playing. It was a clear picture. Let's just say, for the sake of it, it was imagining the moonlight shimmering on a lake. Now, I'm in two minds as to whether it's useful to tell a student what I'm imagining when I listen to a passage of music. It probably doesn't sort of matter, in the sense that, unless it's something so memorable or so strange that they can never get it out of their head and find their own imagery or sentiment. So I think it's probably okay. It's a bit like illustrations in a book, isn't it? So, you can read a book and it might have some illustrations, but you can still use your own imagination. But I think you can't overstate just how clearly the person giving this masterclass actually heard and imagined that music in their mind's ear and how they wanted it to sound. They have such a clear conception of that. And when they sit down to play it, they just enter that scene. They can, I think it's called code switching, isn't it? You can switch modes, and you can just sit down, and they switch modes, and they sit down and they can just enter the world of that music. And that just comes from doing it habitually. But the third thing that I think is really crucial in this whole business of playing what we want, how we want it, is an unshakable confidence. And if you rise to that level of giving masterclasses, then you're in a position of power, aren't you? You've got all the power in that situation. You've got all the experience. And with that comes unshakable confidence. In many cases, I'm sure, arrogance as well. The kind of arrogance that football pundits sometimes say, sometimes comment on. Oh, he has a sort of arrogance about him that gives him that absolute unshakable confidence to pass a defender and put the ball in the back of the net exactly, place it exactly where he wants it, he or she. And so that combination of three things, being able to audiate the music clearly, having a strong conception in the present moment of how you want that music to sound, and your own confidence in just how you hear that music and how you want it to sound. These are the most important things, I think, in producing that exquisite outcome. And I would say everything else is subservient to those things. So, exactly what finger you use in which place, any focus on the minutiae of how you're touching the keys or pressing the keys, all that can come as a result of these three things. The caveat is, I'm assuming that there is an ongoing journey of addressing any aspects of your playing technique, your whole body technique. And, assuming you are, and continuing to free up and integrate any aspects of your playing coordination that might need freeing up or integrating more, then you may well be wasting your time if you're trying to seek the magic way of practicing this passage or this phrase. You may just be able to do it just by focusing on it more. And I think it's easy to underestimate just how much being present and entering the scene, entering the world of that passage emotionally and mentally in the present moment can actually produce that outcome for you without you doing anything else in particular, anything extraneous, anything special, So I don't think there's there's usually not a secret to the mechanics of how you play something. It's almost all in the intention. So I would say that you could practice your passage by starting without playing it. Just sit on the piano stool and imagine playing it in your mind's ear. How much detail can you hear it in? Can you hear the main melody clearly? Like if you were to imagine the main melody of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I can imagine you can do that, right? So can you hear the main melody? Can you play it in your imagination? What about the bass line? You know, and any aspects of the inner parts, the inner texture. If you can't, this may be something that you might want to start focusing on more and more in your practice. And then as you do that without playing, really commit to the moment, really commit to the scene, the mood, the character, the atmosphere, and imagine it exactly as you want it. And then, if you don't feel you have the confidence to do it, use some strategy to build your confidence in that moment. Maybe pretend that you are a more confident person, or you know, pretend that you're a revered player. You're that person giving the masterclass. Everybody's here to listen to you and what you have to say. And I do kind of appreciate the irony, if irony is the right word, of linking this to the masterclass context, because as I've indicated, you know, earlier on, very often a masterclass context can diminish our own confidence. You know, if I had £1 for every time I've submitted a student in good faith to take part in a masterclass, and only for them to come out afterwards and for me to have to console them, I would have a few pounds at least. And if I think back to all the masterclasses I've been to, you know, a lot of them have been quite demoralising. You know, they didn't seem to exist to draw my own sentiments, my own expressivity from me, but rather to kind of put me in my place and tell me how to play in the way that somebody else thinks I should play. So that's a kind of separate issue. Maybe I'll go into that in another video. But putting all that aside for a moment, find a way of building that confidence to enter that scene and express that music how you want to. Maybe pretend you're somebody else, maybe you're in a different environment. Maybe you're in a safe, imaginary environment that you can picture. You know, a forest or a hillside, somewhere beautiful. And you've got your piano there, and all that matters is that you are expressing the music how you want to in that moment. And don't practice it over and over, because when you do that, you tend to focus less and less. You know, you almost sort of start to go onto a kind of autopilot. Instead, decide to play it only once or twice and really commit to it and be as present as possible. Treat it like you would something that involves more danger even, you know, like a high wire walk or something meditative, you know, a gymnastics routine, something where you've only got one chance to do it, so you have to be present. And then enjoy that feeling of creating exactly what you want, manifesting exactly what you want. And I don't mean that in an airy-fairy way. I mean just bringing into being your conception of the music. And I think you'll find that these things will produce your outcome, assuming that your journey into free and fluent technique is underway as well. So if you want to continue to think critically about your piano playing and even perhaps find some fresh solutions in unexpected places, please hit like and subscribe, and why not check out the online courses at pianoportals.com.